All right, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming to the NAWP 2026 poetry reading. I am super excited. These are three poets whose work I love. More on them in a minute, though. We always try to start these things. Oh, well, I'm getting ahead of myself already. The we is me and Jared Beloff. We always try to start these things with a quick explanation for our first timers because NAWP is kind of a unique entity in the literary world. And it is AWP time of year, which is when we get the most questions about NOP. The NAWP stands for not at AWP. And for those who are brand new to the whole thing, AWP is kind of the major writers conference, like pick your profession, right? Like I'm also an English teacher. So the National Council of Teachers of English is the big annual conference with 5,000 to 10,000 people. AWP is the same thing for those of us who engage in the creative writing fields. Jared and I are both busy teachers and parents and have never been able to go to AWP. And we used to make jokes about this back when Twitter was functional in a happy place. Um, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say without Nazis. It's always had some, but like, it wasn't a Nazi bar. It used to be a good bar that a Nazi would walk into and we'd all boo. Anyways, back in the days when Twitter was fun, we would make jokes about, well, I'm attending a session at NAWP, and it's called like doing laundry, blah, 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 stuff like that. Jared, being the smart one, said, Mitch, we should actually make NAWP a thing. And here we are several years later, before we hit record and welcomed everybody in, we were chatting behind the scenes about how online friendships kind of have this weird timeless quality. Like, I don't actually remember when we started all of this, but I would guess a solid 3 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago. So thank you for attending the February 2026 NAWP reading. Joining us tonight are Sarah Carey, Maud Lavin, and Claire Taylor. For those of you who haven't done this before, it's kind of a standard literary reading setup. We'll go in alphabetical order. They'll each read for somewhere in the 10-ish minutes range. And then we'll do some Q&A toward the end. Feel free to drop comments in the chat. It should be up, although Jared does more hosting than I do. So if there are any Zoom problems, I apologize in advance. And then, yeah, we'll do a little Q&A at the end. All right. So one more thank you, and let's get going. Like I said, we go in alphabetical order, which works out really well this time around because Sarah Carey is alphabetically first and also has, like, it might actually still be hot off the presses, copy of a new book. So I will read the bio real quick and then throw it over to you, Sarah. North Carolina native Sarah Carey grew up in Florida and holds an MA in English creative writing from Florida State University. Her career spans journalism and veterinary medical communications at the University of Florida. She's the author of Bloodstream, which just came out from Mercer University Press, and the Grief Committee Minutes from St. Julian Press, as well as two chapbooks, including Accommodations, winner of the 2018 Concrete Wolf Chapbook Award. For more about Sarah and her work, visit sarahkcarey.com, and I will actually drop that in the chat so that's easily accessible for you all. Sarah, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mitch, for inviting me. And Jared, if you're listening, I don't see your face here in the Zoom, but he's not. But I know the two of you work together as a team to make these readings happen. And I'm just really grateful to be invited and to be here. And looking forward to hearing Maud and Claire read tonight as well, both new to me poets, and just really excited about that. And just for a little bit of background, as Mitch said, my book Bloodstream did launch this week on the 3rd. And so obviously I'm excited about that, but I've never read poems from Bloodstream. So this is the debut reading for Bloodstream poems. And I had to think about what I might want to, thank you, what I might want to start with. So I've got about, I don't know, 7 or 8 poems here to read from tonight, but just a little bit of background about the book and the poems that you're going to hear. I don't want to over talk, but Bloodstream, I would say, is a kind of eclectic mixture of poems and themes, largely focused on family stories, ancestral inheritances, animals that have been a part of my life. And they also capture the voices of different selves that I have occupied over time since childhood, really. And there's even a poem here that I'll read that was inspired by a story that I wrote when I worked for the College of Veterinary Medicine. So a story about a story that became a poem. So anyway, and most of the poems are largely based in Florida, where I grew up and live. But they also include settings in Anchorage, Alaska, and in North Carolina, and all places where I've had family roots and connections. So the first poem I'm going to read is actually titled Anchorage. And I wrote it specifically for this collection after I had turned in my manuscript because I felt like it needed an opening poem that pulled together some of the themes that folks would read, come across as they were reading the book. Anchorage. If an anchorage is a holdfast, is root-like, fixes aquatic organisms to their substrate, think kelp, or how a spider's silken tethers help it move. Perhaps a bloodstream is an anchorage, scaffold, a branching out from origin to vein, lineage to story, a riverbed. I flow up to meet you, protean hypothesis, dwell in echo, undertow. Where we come from doesn't ordain what we cling to. I revisit my father's rooms in Anchorage, including the living, a solarium, the dining, absent a table. The shower remodeled for easier access had a window overlooking bushes thick with raspberries my sister and I picked, ate right there in the yard soon after the breakup. Found nothing like sweet Florida's. I freeze frame the glacial way he'd rise from his recliner, brace against his walker to greet me, when in his day he'd crave a ticket any place adventure called. Cathedrals, streets of cobblestone in Florence and Munich, whole itineraries to trouble the ground his ancestors walked. Imagine their ingress, egress, until the diabetes beat his body down. When my nieces ask about their late grandfather, I say it's a shame they'll never know him healthy, always with a plan. How he would say, "My name is John, what's yours?" to any handyman. How when he taught you'd never see him in a shirt without pin clipped to pocket or outside without a proper hat. He only wanted Florida again, just one last time before he died. I see him coming or going near the portico, his overflowing bookcase, coats racked trench to rain. Hear background chimes, mark time. Hear father translate nostalgia from Greek roots, return home, and pain. Bearings, October 13th, 2023. All day we drove the parkway, listened for bugling elk, but heard only the roar of exhaust, the howl of bearings, close to Klingman's dome, in the highest of seasons, everyone hot to hike until we finally gave up on waiting, squealed our wheels in a tight turnaround, then headed to our rental cabin home on loan. Here and there, between Angelica, Astor, my childhood stretches from peaks to foothills to flat Florida and back. I tell you tales my father told to make our trips go faster, point to lookouts we languished in, stunned at the hill's stark relief. How something stuck on the forest underside remains unbearable. Home on my father's 92nd birthday is a moving forward, flashback, a yearning for flocks of wild turkey, gangs of elk, harbingers of luck. We crack our windows, breathe in campfire smoke, a whiff of cedar, fir. Deracinated, we orient. A few more years may lie ahead, or not. Long before elk were reintroduced into Cataloochee, before the love would die, my parents honeymooned here or nearby, but all from the wedding party are long gone. I imagine them quieting in their abditive spaces, wherever in the valley they lay down. Miami, Mise en Scène, 1960s. Summers we drive from Tallahassee for Grandmother S. and Lamar, rocking in the Florida room with Jackie Gleason, and away we go, and the show would go on, go on, go on forever. Grandmother S. might be baking a coconut cake she'd nibble a sliver of when done, or saving herself the heel of a loaf, cut and buttered to toast in the oven for dinner, Our places at the drop leaf table set with her wedding sterling. Beneath the white hot sun, we'd melt, hold fists full of grapefruit, big as our heads. In the garage, Lamar might strike a lighter, bent for a smoke amidst a montage of tables and tools we would never return to. He goes first, uprooted, any spark long gone. I take Grandmother S. to senior daycare, a playpen of innocence in a room dubbed activity, where children become parents, grandparents become children, like widows and orphans, broken figures in family paragraphs, unreconcilable in the body text, as if we tried but can't recall where the story should go, where hands press over laps, hello, hello, and I translate, do I know you? Take this history. Tragedy struck great uncle Marshall, his family after the war, mother said. I parsed Marshall's papers for clues, paged through his darkness. Fell out a fourth floor window while sleepwalking, the death certificate said. His age a cell marked 36. Mother said he drank, though it was never discussed. I too imbibed when younger. Imagine a ledge I could have leapt or fallen from, but something pulled me back. A tragedy, mother said, and said again when Julia, a cousin, newlywed, bled out, kicked in the gut by a horse. Yet mother has medicine in her voice, recounting the losses she outlived, lest I read too much into things. Take this history with a grain of salt. You are more than DNA, mother assuages, tries to shake me free. Frisian story. But we can't say beautiful, I learned in approvals. Rather describe the Frisian mare, its tail, as long and thick, its legs by their trademark feathers. Some adjectives still being acceptable, though Mark Twain said when you catch one, kill it, along with your extraneous color and verbs. I grasp at words my editors will keep for the ebony body, a build better than statuesque. For this warm blood, a noun. In this instance, warm is allowed. Though Frisian as proper is capped, and anyone knowing the breed doesn't need my apt description of how the stallion survived its particular gastric impaction, commonly known as colic, or the scope of the J incision the surgeon sliced down its side, the number of stitches, or a background of 2,000 years of history, even the breed's near extinction. But that's a long story, if you want one, of hope, if we're allowed to call it that. A comeback for today. Rather say elegance without saying it. Say all black is the standard adhered to by most registries, that only a single white star on the forehead is possible for a purebred. But what I really want to tell you is after its week-long recovery from surgery, I touched this horse of many hands with my own, then put them to work I could still do, to share this draft horse with you, leave you wanting. Let the lack of language speak. What did Frost say? Nothing gold can stay. Bodysuit. Facing the future, first Christmas an orphan. I opened the plastic bag full of clothes we'd taken from her true home and her borrowed one, the last she'd known, and came across my mother's bodysuit, flashback and burnout lace, a shade like Cabernet, so holiday, around the time we knew she'd not be coming back, and all we had to do was empty. Poured myself into her silhouette, smooth waist, firm tuck. Imagined I conformed with give to spare, but when I pulled the garment overhead, then slithered into hollow sleeves, the spandex stretched to hold me in, I almost couldn't breathe. while between the thickness of my thighs the bottom snaps, refuse to reach. But why would they? And why would I think anything she'd leave behind might fit me now, in this room of her spilled residuals? So I change back to whatever form claret, oxblood first found me in. Conjure Aphrodite. Outside, above a low brick ledge, a snake's twisted shed. How am I doing on time? Have I got time for one more? Or is that good? Are we good? I can end right there.
What one more would be great.
All right, I'll make this one quick. Since that was a bodysuit poem, I wanted to end with another poem that's a little funny, but it's a little different. It's one of those selves becoming selves poems I was talking about. It's called The Body Inside My Body from 1980. Car salesmen speckle showroom floors, drift periodically away for a drag, resurface, reeking of smoke when they remember me circling, say to holler if I need them, let me go, outside where I lose myself in rows of color-coded mirrors designating levels of trim. Men in polos hawk best terms. Low down, no interest for the package with moonroof, premium, stereo. A door opens, I slide into a seat with no memory. Adjust. Someone pushes my buttons, says I'm made for power everything. Steering, windows, locks, but I'm not automatic. Tire of test drives, turn and toss their keys. They panic, offer the last ditch take or leave. I take my time. Once I burned through a wildfire haze until I couldn't see, pulled over when a wind gust opened the highway shoulder. Breathed exhaust. Later I learned the gasket blew. There was no quick redo. From then on, I ran my rides into the ground, like the body inside my body, revved, hot. Dreamt older models, sleek sedans, like Cutlass, Skylark, pure, stripped down. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was amazing. And was this when everybody was in and we were recording? This was your well, you sent it before you started reading. This is your first time reading some of these. So
Yeah.
thank you very much. I'm thrilled that we all got to be here for it. They are fantastic poems.
Thank you so much.
Everybody who will be at your in-person book release next month is lucky to get poems and cake, but the
Well,
poems.
thanks everybody for being here. It matters a lot. Thank you. Thanks, Mitch.
You are very welcome. Oh yeah, there we go. Trying to give you the. I always forget about the reactions. All right. Thank you, Sarah. Next up is Maud Lavin. Maud, thank you for being here. Maud is well, sorry, I should read it straight. A Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominee. Maud Lavin has published in Rec and Review, Copy Who Poetry, The Nation, Harper's Bazaar, Slate, and other venues. One of her nonfiction books, Cut with a Kitchen Knife, was named a New York Times notable book. Her other books include Mermaids and Lazy Activists, an eco novel, Swim Lessons, Poetry, which I believe is the newest book, right? Nonfiction works, Clean New World and Push Comes to Shove, both MIT Press. Creative nonfiction, Silences Ohio from Cowboy Jamboree Press, and 3 anthologies. Her writing has appeared in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, German, Dutch, Finnish, and Spanish, as well as English. She is a 4-H alumna and a Guggenheim Fellow. I'm not a 4-H alumna, but as somebody who grew up on a farm, I love that you have that in your bio. I just got to give you a shout out for that, Pete. That tidbit right there. All right, Maud, thank you for being here tonight. Take it away.
Thank you, Mitch. Yeah, 4-H, years in 4-H, years. Okay, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks to the other two poets who are reading, and Kitty and Jane and Vic and everybody. Okay, I'm just reading 4 poems. I have a wicked cold, so a little out of it, but Allegra and tons of tea, and I think we should be happy anyway. But if I sound like a little fogged, that's why. But fog is good. Okay, so I'm going to start with two new poems that are coming out in the journal Harpy Hybrid in about a month. Um, and the first one, oh, I'm in Chicago, and these are difficult times for us all, I think. And sometimes when it's all really getting to me, I just walk a mile or so and go to the Art Institute, to the big art museum. And that's what the first one refers to. It's called Never. I never learned to bake bread, never have roasted a turkey or gotten pregnant, birthed a baby. I know how to say no to some things. I never learned to put up a wall, though, in my heart when seeing others tear gassed or shot or hung or shot again. I wake up in the night wondering what I can do. Also, when the tear gas will come my way, trigger my asthma. I have learned to go to the museum, look for the strange. Renault's eye hanging over a seascape, death transformed into beauty. Small doses of fear. Moss's self-portrait with a scorpion and a snake. My heart repairs for today. I too will wear a scorpion and a half smile. Yeah. So highly recommended. Great to escape into art. And the second new one also refers to, is bounces off of art. Cosmo White's work at the Art Club of Chicago. Neither of these is dependent on actually seeing the art. So it's the evocation that you get when viewing. Okay, and I'm writing a longer prose thing about Cosmo's work because I really fell in love with it. Okay, this is called Not of the Same Time. To carry earlier moments within you, to use these as fuel to dream of the future as well as the past, to shake loose, to kaleidoscope, to montage elements of time. I stand in Cosmo White's Hush Now, Don't Explain, seeing layers, ordinary beaded curtains painted with images of protest. Above are clean modern lines of the architectural structure. Beyond are the white walls of the Arts Club gallery. Here is European modernism, old Jamaica, newer anti-racism protests. Here is an homage to Cosmo's late architect father and to the now. Can montage oppose fascism when its images refuse to dictate? Let's let that question hang, keep it as a hope. What is montage if not just a technique, sometimes a style? On the other hand, quote, order and hierarchy, do they make up the fascist architectural style? Perhaps many are looking for quiet in the order, for a job in the hierarchy, unquote, wrote German Jewish Ernst Bloch in 1932. He yearned for spur and traces that could inspire a more sharing future, as well as evoking comfort with remnants of the past. I yearn too, excuse me, maybe catching glimpses in the beaded curtains, in the more recent images of anti-racist struggles, in the beauty of the installation. Okay, now this is my poetry book that just came out in the fall from Tulip Wood Books in Seattle. Big thanks to Lynn Ellis, poet, who was my editor for the book. And the first half of the book is about wild swimming, in this case, Lake Michigan, which I love to do. I love to swim in the lake. And about 3 months from now, it should warm up enough to get back in the water. And then the second half of the book is just about other flows and different issues and things that water makes me think of. So this is to everybody who loves swimming and dreaming. Okay, the first one is from the first half about Lake Michigan. Spell. I step into the lake, cold takes me in, dull ankle pain disappears. Get beyond, invasive species cells, quagga mussels to clear sand, walk out deeper. My left knee rocks, meniscus soreness disappears. Shock of cool water lapping my labia tingles. I rise on my toes, settle back into the sand. Keep going, in up to my waist. My hips loosen. I splash my arms. So does the lake. So does the lake water. Now shivers. A wave grasps my chest. Laughs. Oh, stroke, breaststroke, breathe, frog kick, stroke, kick. My back seizes, then let's go. Stroke, kick, mouthful spit, stroke, kick, turn around, stroke, kick, view the shore, the horizon, the blue sky, the water lifts me high. Really, really fun. Yay. Jane and I have gone lake swimming in another lake. I just remembered. It was really fun. Okay, and my last poem that I'd like to read is really a prose poem. It's from the second half of the book, and it's, probably not that many people have written poems for topology and theoretical math, but we all like to stand out some ways. So it's called Topology. And it starts with a surprisingly poetic quote from Wikipedia. In mathematics, topology is concerned with the properties of a geometric object that are preserved under continuous deformation, such as stretching, twisting, crumpling, and bending. That is, without closing holes, opening holes, tearing, gluing, or passing through itself. Okay, so topology is like this. This is my voice again. The surfaces are constantly rolling and turning, and on one surface, an abstracted figure twists and pulses with the movement. Apply a function to that figure, a function that stretches it and moves it to moan. Well, in your mind, it moans. Here on paper, there's no sound, but there's steps you make up. You apply another function, a different one. Do this on a Sunday afternoon early in your college years, lying on your bed, eating M&Ms, and using mathematical symbols when it's summer and the windows are open. You love every minute of it. It feels like flying. Only much later do you realize the safety inherent in this feral game. The figure holds, even while it transforms, it still exists. Everything changes it, but still it lasts. And the functions you invent are under your control, even as they cause the figure to writhe and toss with the moving surfaces. Somehow, in ways you still don't understand, you can embrace this in your mind like swimming, like the water embraces you when you swim. By you, as you know, I mean me, but I use second person because it could be something that you could imagine too if you were so inclined. It's made up, but describable to a T, and so it can be shared, even transformed further like a story. I did share such things, in fact, either in the theoretical math class I was taking or the one I was TAing. Really, I was teaching that one because when the instructor figured out I, the TA, liked not just to grade papers, but to teach, and well, it was summer and he wanted to be outside, he often just turned the class over to me. The students were pre-med, generally a year or two older than I was. I must have been about 18 then. They didn't want to play as much as get a good grade and get into med school. I understood, but I taught them a bit about playing with mathematics anyway. It was so beautiful, that play, like birds winging it in a gusty sky, like lying on my back in a creek's current and being pulled along, watching the clouds and closing my eyes and still knowing where I was going. Okay, thank you again. Thanks, everybody.
Richard, you got a shout out in the comments. PhD mathematician here and much approve of that poem. Love that.
Really? Who?
Richard Jordan. You
Oh,
you went and read a math prof poem to a math prof. I love it. That was great. Maud, thank those. A, the writing was outstanding. Thank you for reading here tonight. But B, thank you also for powering through the cold. I really appreciate you hanging in there. All right. So yeah, thanks again. That was outstanding. Sorry, I am, as I said, not great at juggling all the elements of hosting here. All right. Also, shout out to the Great Lakes. Thanks for reading a thing about the Great Lakes. I gotta get back to Chicago. I know we were talking about that earlier. It's been too long. All right, I am ready on my end. Sorry for that delay there. I had to get the right thing pulled up. Claire Taylor is our last reader tonight. Also exciting because her book, I mean, I'm about to pass the mic over to you, Claire, but correct me if I'm wrong. The book comes out very soon, but is not officially out yet. So you can still get on the pre-order if you act quickly.
That's fair.
I'm seeing nods. All right. Bio says Claire Taylor is a writer for both adult and youth audiences. Her debut poetry collection, April and Back Again, is available now from Publishing Genius. Claire is the founding editor of Little Thoughts Press, a literary magazine for young readers. She lives with her family in Baltimore, Maryland, in an old stone house where birds love to roost. It's a great detail. You can find her online at clairemtaylor.com. I will drop that in the chat in a moment, as well as a link to where to get the book. Real quick, before I toss over the mic, if you haven't noticed, did the same thing for Sarah and Maud's most recent books. So you can check the chat if you're not sure where to find all of these great poems you're hearing tonight. Claire, thanks for being here. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you for having me, Mitch. And just an extra special thanks to Mitch, who took his very, very limited free time to read my book early and write a blurb for it, which was so nice of him. As the whole kind of basis of NAWP would indicate, he doesn't have a whole lot of that time. So it meant a lot that you dedicated a little bit of it to my book. So I appreciate that. And yes, as Mitch said, my book comes out end of this month, I think officially February 24th. So you can still pre-order it. And then I think basically as soon as it arrives at the publisher, he'll start shipping them out. So it'll come sometime in the next couple of weeks for sure. I wrote this collection basically as a project for my 39th birthday. And all of you that were on here at the very start, and my dad logged in and said, instantly said, "Hi, Claire." I will shout him out again because growing up with him, he always sort of told us to have a project going, to kind of let your life be directed by whatever project you're working on and to always have something that you're working on. And so for leading up to my 40th birthday, I wanted to do something, but my youngest son had just turned 1. And anybody who's had a 1-year-old knows that that year between 1 and 2 is absolutely wild. And it's impossible to get anything done or have any real project. And it's really, really difficult to remember anything that happened because they change so quickly and time moves so fast in that year in particular, it feels like. And so what I decided to do was I would just write one poem each month that sort of was like a summary of my life that month, the things that were going on and that I was thinking about and that my family was doing as a way to try to capture some of those memories and be able to have something written down about my second child, because I had had so much that I wrote about my first child and I didn't want to get, to the point where my younger one was grown and was like, what about me? So I started out just writing one poem a month, and that became the foundation of April and Back Again, which is my collection. And it basically kind of follows through the seasons for a whole year from April 2024 to April 2025. And when I started it in April 2024, I, of course, did not know that by November 2024, we would have Trump, reelected, and that when we started 2025, everything would very quickly feel like it was unraveling and then only getting worse and worse from there. So it's sort of an interesting time capsule of kind of an unexpected year that starts pre-Trump and then ends kind of very early after his second inauguration. So I'm going to read a few pieces from throughout the seasons, and I hope you enjoy them. I'll start in the beginning with spring of 2024. Doxology for tired mothers. Is it not also holy to slice the crust off bread, decrown strawberries, and peel the skin from an apple's flesh? Do you know how many times I've knelt to wash someone's feet, kissed the red flame of burnt skin to offer healing? Tell me, how is a lullaby not a psalm, the body canting in prayer for a gentle night? What could be holier than to still worship the being that spits and wails in the face of your devotion, to bow back aching again and again before the altar of this love? Everywhere I think of exits. The 7-year-old is fast, much faster than I am. Run, I will say, and off he'll go, racing towards survival. But the baby I will have to carry, and he'll slow me down. His thick-bottomed heaviness, his tight fists clutching my shirt. I think about this all the time. We wear our love like a bullseye. While playing 2 hours of Chutes and Ladders, I contemplate the futility of life. We can't win. One of us reaches the top and then rolls a 3, and there's that fucking chute again. The long one that takes you all the way back down to the bottom, like starting the whole game over. Roll, move, fall. Roll, move, fall. I lay awake all night, not finishing this poem in my head. I lay awake all night imagining my own death. Rumor had it, a boy who lived down the road from me drowned in front of his friends. He dove headfirst into the river and never came up. They stood and waited, watched as the water's surface smoothed into a tomb. At the time, I asked my mother what it would feel like to drown, but she didn't know, like falling asleep, perhaps. Now I am the mother, and I don't have any answers either. Roll, move, fall. Roll, move, fall. I am back at the bottom of the board. All it takes is a little luck to find a different ending. A new series of numbers, 4 instead of 3, and suddenly it's over. I picture a body bloated with silt, a mother choking on grief. I lay awake all night, counting my breaths. Icarus, reimagined as a mother. A little short one for you. When you hug me goodbye, I decide to go for it and tell you I love you. You only let Dad take you to school in the morning now. The morning after Trump is reelected, I think about my son's arm. Broken at the elbow and requiring 2 surgeries. His sweet, small body in a hospital bed. He couldn't make sense of it. For months on end, we recounted the details. A loose grip on the monkey bars. Distracted attention, me too far away to catch him. Why, he wondered. The answer, a simple, ineluctable truth. Sometimes we fall so hard, we break. There. This one is called A Poem in Which Chuck Knobloch Maybe Makes Snow. And it's sort of, I did not write it at all with the people of Minnesota in mind because I wrote it well before anything was happening there. But I think parts of it do speak to their Midwestern resilience that we are seeing so on display. A man from Minnesota says he grew up throwing water into the January air and watched it turn into snowfall. Yeah, sure, I say, and tell him I grew up a fish, not one free in the wide wild, but already caught on the line. I was the sweat prickling your kneecaps, the night heat, a restless sleep. I was that train derailment you once saw on TV. He made fucking snow in his backyard, or at least he claimed to. Like how everyone claims Babe Ruth called his shot, though it was probably just a coincidence. Old Babe rounding the bases thinking, phew, I could have looked like a real asshole there. He probably was a real asshole. Weren't they all in one way or another? I ask my husband to tell me a random fact about a baseball player, which is another way of saying I love you. And he wonders if I already know about Chuck Knobloch. The name sounds familiar, but let's not forget all the things I'm trying to remember, like the grip of my mother's hands on a colander, her face hidden in steam as the pasta drains. Chuck was one of those guys who could throw the ball and then suddenly couldn't. The one who hit Keith Olbermann's mom in the stands. I almost feel bad for him, though not as bad as I do for Keith Olbermann's mom. I say almost because I felt bad, but then rescinded the feeling when I read he choked his wife. An asshole for sure. He was a Yankee when he hit Mrs. Olbermann, but before that, he played for the Minnesota Twins. I can't help but wonder if in all that time he spent in the Twin Cities, did Chuck ever once make snow? Ever stand outside in that Midwestern chill, a Texas boy born and bred, and marvel at how one thing can so suddenly become another, like how a gold glove turns into a cautionary tale? Or maybe it's not such a marvel after all. Inexplicable failure, the flip side of inexplicable success, the monster lurking in the man. What is snow, if not water waiting to be transformed? All right. Since it, like I said, was a book founded on, poems written each month, I will read February. So this is February of last year. We burned through the month in a fever. Sorry, no, that should be with a fever. All of us prisoned in bed, hacking and sniffling, our bodies racked with chills. We shiver and sweat while outside ice pelts the windows, crystallines the trees, and democracy falls. What is to be done of all this horror? We're so useless in our weakened state, watching through splayed fingers, eyes peering out above covers, hoping this is all just a fever dream. A love poem. I wanted to write you a love poem, but I woke up and the ground was still covered in ice, the sky still a sullen gray. Not again, I thought. I can't bear another day of this. But then there you were, pouring the coffee, scrambling the eggs, looking so much like the promise of spring. All right. I've got two more, and they're one each for my boys. A pitcher of mint tea. Tucked against stone, mint returns, determined and vibrant. I love a thing that loves to live, that pushes aside the weeds of the world unperturbed, like a toddler waking with a song on his tongue. Curls, untamed, sun or shade, it hardly matters. He grows and grows. All right. This last one is called This Too is a Kind of Magic. That's a little bit longer, so I'm gonna take one more sip of water. Okay. We take the dog for a walk, and my son tells me about echolocation. I tell him I once read that dogs communicate through their pee, and the rest of the time, whenever our dog stops and lifts his leg, we joke about the messages he's leaving behind. Oh, hey, I love dog biscuits, my son says in a goofy voice, and we laugh harder than we should. It's a small miracle, this conversation. He is so bothered by me so much of the time. His mood a hatchet aimed to sever the fetal bond. It is twilight and chilly. We are not dressed for the weather. But he bounces around catching an imaginary baseball, throwing his arms up triumphantly as if he's made the final out. He tells me how he's reading Night of the Twisters in school, and I tell him about the storms I lived through as a child, crouching in the hall of my elementary school, face to knees and hands on head as the doors blew open and rain pelted my back, or sitting in the front seat beside my mother as we drove through the green-black night along some road in Alabama, searching for a place to pull over. Not here, not here, because we were driving over a river, the flash of a guardrail through the curtain of rain, the empty black space beyond. And there was a time so far back it is only a vague, disjointed memory, a series of images in my mind. A big cardboard box in the basement, my mother going up and down the stairs, my father gone at work or coming back from work, my father somewhere that had my mother looking worried. The sound of something very loud overhead, though perhaps I am only imagining this part. My son wonders if I was scared, and I want to tell him, I am always scared. He knows so little about how easily everything goes wrong. We loop behind the old mill and past the discarded building where swifts stop to nest each fall, arriving in fits and starts, polka dotting the sky until suddenly there are hundreds of them, a cyclone of birds circling before dive bombing at top speed into a chimney. The first time you see it, it takes your breath away, and every fall after that feels like a place you've been before. This, too, is a kind of magic. When the dog stops to send another message, my son shivers, leans into the side of my body, and oh, bless this moment, lets me hug him. I inhale the scent of his head like I've done 1,000 times, marvel at the weight of him, the length of his legs, his arms, his hair in need of a cut. I stop short of telling him I love him more than I ever thought I could love anything, though I am desperate for him to know. I let the moment carry its own weight. Let the quiet unfold around us. In the distance, there's a siren, a barking dog, a future I can't predict. Somewhere, a flock of birds travels home. That's it. Thank you so much for having me.
That was outstanding. Thank you very much for joining us and for reading for NAWP tonight. Um, I mean, like you mentioned, I got a sneak peek, so like I knew that set was going to be good. All right. Again, before we shift gears, just another thank you to Sarah, Maud, and Claire for all reading such outstanding work tonight. That was like a true pleasure. Thank you very much. I mean, the world is. I love how the internet has just started calling the world the horrors, the American world the horrors, and this was a phenomenal respite from the horrors. So thank you. Um, we do have a few minutes for some Q&A. So if anybody in the audience does have a question they want to throw out, there might be a hand raising thing in Zoom. You can also just unmute and start talking or drop it in the chat. Would be organized way to do things. Um, well, while I give the audience a chance to chime in with questions, I do want to throw one out there though, because one thing I really noticed with all three of your readings was and maybe this is just the news, maybe what I was just saying about the horrors, but like all three of you read a set of poems that kind of comment on dealing with pain in one way or another. Um, so in what sense does this is sort of a basic way. This is like a ninth grade question, I guess, but like how does writing help process pain for you? Any all of you? I have host God mode, so I can see that Sarah unmuted. So Sarah, what do you have to say?
Well, I guess it's true that while you hear people say, "Oh, poetry shouldn't be therapy," right? It's not therapy. I have to say, I have dealt with grief, or a better way of saying it, I don't know what I would do without poetry as a means of dealing with grief. When I lost both of my parents, I'd say my second chapbook definitely came after the death of my dad. And it's not like all the poems were about that at all. Some of them were, but it was more that I had to have a project, I had to have a distraction, I had to have something. And, while in my first full length, I wrote the Grief Committee Minutes was my first full length, just came out a little over a year ago. And that book was, written when my mother's health started, declining, and then subsequently after she died. And it was a distraction. It was a means of coping with life at a very complex and chaotic time. And so I guess I wouldn't go so far as to saying it's, therapy, because it enables me to develop a mask that I can, I write poems and I'm able to get that grief on paper. And somehow once it's there and a poem begins, I'm able to distance myself from it maybe enough to just cope a little bit better and put one foot, in front of the other to get through some of those difficult times. So I don't know. I'd be interested in hearing what others feel about that too.
Well said. Yeah, Maud, I see your hand.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Um, I think that in these four poems that I read, I'm really writing about not so much directly pain, but different things that I do that other people do to balance, to go look at art, go swimming outdoors, where you can just the views that you get are unbelievable, um, and even the topology is sort of like swimming, like it's said, like, well, to use your imagination um, to uh, to travel, in your mind. So there's some references to pain, like when you walk into the cold waters of Lake Michigan, it does alleviate and also shock. But I think the writing is of reaching out to those wonderful things in life that help each of us keep a balance. My writing, that's, I mean, the stopping in at the museum is a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Yeah.
A joy.
Yeah, for me, I write so much about parenting, like right now in my life, and I really came back to writing when my older son was born, and especially kind of during the pandemic, when he was a toddler, and I was trying to kind of deal with and process both the experience of trying to raise this very young kid and make sense of everything that was going on. And so this, collection again is sort of, I find myself back in the same position of having a young toddler during a Trump presidency. And um, it's it's very strange to have to take in everything that is happening in the world and then immediately shift to like, you know, playing Hot Wheels cars and, you know, racing around the house kind of, you know, in this sort of joyful way with a child. It's wonderful in some ways because it is a distraction, but it is also really a lot of kind of mental gymnastics to be able to do that, and it's exhausting. It's really exhausting, and the exhaustion of it can be very painful. And so I have found that the writing allows me to put some of those feelings and some of those thoughts into one place and sort of have them there, knowing I can kind of return to them and think about them, but they're on paper and now they're a little bit out of my head. So I can then go back and focus on, you know, trying to feel sort of like genuine empathy for my 8-year-old's social concerns, whereas, you know, if I don't have that space, if I don't have that writing practice, I feel a little bit like, who cares what, this person said to you, earlier today, like, look at what's happening in the world. And it's like, but he's 8. His world is, these interactions in school. It is these kind of smaller things while also trying to make sense of everything else he's hearing about and that is going on. So yeah, for me, mostly I find that a lot of my writing kind of has elements of pain in it because I need to put that pain somewhere so that I can then go on and do the things that I have to do as a parent to just be able to kind of keep my kids happy and moving forward and fed.
I mean, I hear that, and I would also echo that as somebody who taught high school English for over 20 years, right? Like kids will often say, like, why is all this literature so depressing? I'm like, because that's the stuff we have to figure out. Nobody has to figure out cookies. Cookies are awesome, like you have to figure out the other stuff. Vic has a hand up.
Hello, everybody from this bunch of people. My children have questions. So Nell, Nell's question is for Claire. Why don't you ask your question first?
Why did you want to start Little Thoughts Press?
Okay, and Winnie's question is for all of the poets.
How do you become a poet?
Thank you very much for your time. You did wonderful, all of you.
Hi, Nell. Thanks for reading Little Thoughts Press. I started it because I had written like a bunch of stories and poems and stuff for kids that I was sending out as a newsletter to friends who had little kids, during the pandemic, and so that we'd all have something to read and do with our children to keep them entertained. And then I realized I could not keep up the pace of writing all of that stuff on my own. And so, but I really liked the idea of continuing to give kids something to read. So instead, I created the magazine so that other people could come along and submit their work and have their stuff published and shared with kids. And I teamed up with my friend Rachel, who can't be seen but is on here. Hi, Rachel. And she does all the cover art and some of the illustrations and all of that. So it was just a really fun process that allowed me to keep working with Rachel and to work with lots of other writers to bring fun stories and poems to young readers like you. I'm glad you like it. Also, how do you become a poet? I don't have a good answer for that because my answer would be like, be sad and then write about it. Vic, I know you know.
Sarah and Maud, how do you become a poet?
Thanks for asking that. I like all kinds of writing. Like I like to write short stories and I like to write nonfiction. I think when writing poems, for me anyway, it allows me to express emotions easier. And I'm really interested in that. Like, how can you share emotions with other people through words? So, yeah. Do you write poems?
So Sometimes.
Good, good.
Yeah, we're learning how to write poems, aren't we?
Yeah, Mrs.
Okay.
Wow.
Great.
When I was little, I wrote stories. I wrote stories about my family. I wrote stories about when I had a horse and I was in love with horses. And um, I think that, so I wrote, when I was pretty little, and then my parents actually got a divorce when I was 10. And I think when I look back, and I still have many of those stories that I wrote back then, if you can believe it, because my mom kept everything that I ever wrote. And I hadn't seen them in years. And anyway, I've read them, and I think now when I look back, I think that I wrote as a way of processing things that were happening with me and in my life and in my family, because I'd always kind of written about my family. But then I think that it was an outlet. It was a way I could sort of shut the door and get into my own head a little bit and write about things that we weren't necessarily talking about at the dinner table, but just kind of a way of exploring my own head. And and I guess that habit stuck, and I didn't really start writing poems seriously until I was in my late teens, early 20s. And then I never really went back. I never really wrote stories after that. But I would say read everything you can, read, everything that you think you might be interested in. I know when I was saying I wrote stories, I used to stay up late at night when my mom would tell me to go to bed, and I'd leave my light on, my closet light on, after she had gone to sleep, and I'd read science fiction stories, and they would keep me up. And so, because I just found them, I don't know why. I don't read science fiction now. But if you were to find something that you really were interested in and like to read, that's a good way to start. Don't, you're going to have to read enough stuff that you're assigned that maybe you don't really want to read. So figure out a way to read the things that you do want to read, and just feed your imagination and read as much as you can. And then if you feel like writing, then that will come naturally, I think.
Thank you for your gracious answers to my children.
Mhm.
That was fantastic. I cannot imagine a better way to wrap up a NAWP reading than questions from kids in the audience. That was perfect. Thank you so much, Noge family, for chiming in. You guys rock. Sarah, Maud, and Claire, thank you tremendously for your work, for reading with us tonight. Congrats on all three of you having new and recent books out. Thank you to the audience for being here tonight and joining us for an escape from the realities for a minute. This has been a real pleasure. They always are, right? Like every time you go to a reading, it's always worth the time. You think like, I've got so many things to do, and then you get there and you listen to the words, and you're like, yeah, that's why I make time to do this. So thank you everybody for being here. We will see you next time, hopefully. Take care.